The photo in the email stopped me cold. A little girl, no older than 6, smiling up at the camera with big brown eyes. Her hair was braided into 2 neat plaits, her cheeks round and dimpled. Eric's dimples. My hands clenched around the edges of the tablet as nausea rolled through me. The subject line above the photo made my stomach lurch. "Daddy is coming home this weekend." I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred, the words swimming before snapping back into sharp focus. The email was from a woman named Sophie. I didn't recognize the name, but I recognized the man in the photos. Eric, standing beside Sophie, his arm draped over her shoulder, smiling like he didn't have a care in the world. Eric, holding the little girl's hand, their matching grins wide as they posed in front of a birthday cake. Eric, in a blurry selfie, pressing a kiss to Sophie's temple while she giggled, her eyes crinkling with happiness. My Eric. Numbered not my Eric. Not anymore. My hands shook as I scrolled down. The email wasn't an isolated message. It was part of a long thread. Hundreds of emails. 5 years' worth of messages, photos, videos. Proof of an entire life I knew nothing about. I wasn't reading about an affair. This wasn't a secret fling, some meaningless mistake he regretted. This was a second family, a whole other life, a 6-year-old daughter he had kept hidden from me, a woman who thought she was in a loving relationship with a devoted man. My pulse pounded in my ears as I scrolled faster, my breath coming in short, sharp bursts. Sophie had no idea about me. She spoke in every email as if Eric belonged to her, as if he were a dedicated father, a committed partner, a hard-working man trying to balance work and family time. Not a married man. Not a liar. Not the man I thought I knew. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. My whole body felt like it had turned to ice. And then, the front door clicked open. Panic jolted through me. I fumbled to close the tablet just as Eric stepped inside, tossing his jacket over the chair like it was any other night. Like he hadn't been living a double life. "Hey, babe," he said easily, running a hand through his hair. "What's for dinner?" For a moment, all I could do was stare at him. At the man I had loved for 20 years. The man I had trusted. The man who had been lying to me every single day. I forced myself to breathe, to shove down the sickness clawing its way up my throat. He had no idea that I knew. Yet. I smoothed my expression and turned toward the counter, pretending to shuffle through the mail. "Not sure yet," I murmured. "What are you in the mood for?" He grinned, walking over to me like he always did, leaning down to kiss my cheek. I almost flinched. His touch, once warm, once familiar, felt like poison against my skin. Because I knew. I knew that just days ago, those same lips had kissed her. That those same hands had tucked his other daughter into bed. And yet, here he was, acting like the perfect husband. Like nothing had changed. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to keep playing my part. He stretched, sighing. Anything but takeout. I had enough of that while traveling. Traveling. A white-hot fury shot through me, that's what he called it. The weekend getaways. The sudden business trips. The late nights at the office. It had never been work. It had been them. I pressed my nails into my palms so hard it almost hurt, but I smiled. "You work too hard," I said softly. He chuckled. "Tell me about it." I nodded, pretending. Pretending I was still the same woman I was 10 minutes ago. The woman who still thought she had a faithful husband. The woman who didn't know she had been sharing him for years. But that woman was gone. Because now I knew the truth. And Eric had no idea. Not yet. But he would. Because I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg for answers. Number I was going to destroy him, and I was going to make sure that everyone knew exactly who he was. I sat across from Eric at the dinner table, watching him eat like nothing had changed, like he hadn't just come home from his other family, like he hadn't kissed another woman, hugged another child, whispered, "I love you," to someone else. I chewed slowly, forcing my hands to stay steady as I twirled pasta onto my fork. My mind raced, but my face was calm. Eric had no idea that I knew, and I wasn't going to give him a reason to suspect anything. Not yet. "So," I said, keeping my voice light, "any more work trips coming up?" He barely looked up. "Yeah, probably next weekend." Next weekend. The weekend he was supposed to be home with Sophie and Livia. I swallowed my anger. "Another big deal to close?" He nodded, taking a sip of his wine. "Something like that." Liar. I had spent the entire afternoon digging. After Eric had gone upstairs to shower, I grabbed his tablet again and went deeper. I checked his emails, his flight confirmations, his hotel bookings. I followed the money. Thousands of dollars over the past 5 years. Gifts, vacations, school tuition payments. Eric hadn't just been hiding a child. He had been providing for her. I had been married to him for 20 years, and I had never questioned where the money went. Never wondered why our savings weren't as high as they should have been. I trusted him. That trust was dead now. I wasn't stupid. I knew that if I confronted him tonight, he would lie. Gaslight me. Swear it wasn't what I thought. I needed proof. Not just for myself, for her. Sophie had no idea that Eric was married. I was sure of it now. Every email, every message she sent spoke about how hard it was for Eric to co-parent with his ex. She believed she was in a committed relationship with a man who was just struggling to balance 2 homes. She didn't know she was the other woman, and I was going to make sure she found out. "Where are you going this time?" I asked, watching him carefully. Eric barely glanced up. "Chicago." "Chicago? Interesting. His email said he had booked a weekend in Seattle." "Sounds nice," I murmured, sipping my wine. He nodded, already moving on. He wasn't worried. He had no idea I was leading him into his own trap. I let him finish dinner in peace. I let him watch TV, scroll on his phone, act like everything was normal. I even kissed him goodnight. Then, after he fell asleep, I grabbed my keys and drove straight to the address I had memorized from his emails. Sophie's house. It was late when I pulled up outside, my heart hammering as I stared at the warmly lit windows. I had no idea what I was going to say. No plan. Just rage and betrayal pushing me forward. I could see movement inside. A small figure running across the living room, laughing. "Livia!" My stomach twisted. This little girl had no idea that her father was a liar. That the business trips she counted down to were nothing more than an excuse for him to bounce between families. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I could get out of the car, walk up to the door, tell Sophie everything right now. But something stopped me. Not fear, not doubt, strategy. If I stormed in there now, Eric could spin the story. He could tell Sophie I was crazy, that we had been separated for years, that I was bitter and trying to ruin his happiness. That wouldn't work. I needed to be smart. I needed to make sure that when Sophie found out the truth, she couldn't deny it. I took a deep breath, my mind sharpening. There was a better way. A way to make sure Eric's 2 lives collided in the most spectacular way possible. And I knew exactly where to start. I put the car in drive and headed home, my heart pounding with a new sense of purpose. I wasn't just going to expose Eric. I was going to make sure he lost everything. I barely slept that night. I lay in bed beside Eric, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. He was snoring lightly, his breathing steady, completely unaware that everything was about to come crashing down around him. By the time the sun rose, I had a plan. Destroying him wasn't enough. I needed everyone to know what he had done. Sophie, his co-workers, his friends, maybe even his own parents. And most of all, Livia. She deserved to know who her father really was. I rolled over and glanced at Eric's phone on the nightstand. I knew his passcode. He always used the same one. I had never been the type to check his messages before. I had trusted him, but trust had died last night. Quietly, I reached over and picked up his phone. I had to be careful. He was a light sleeper. If he caught me, I'd lose the advantage. I tilted the screen away from him and unlocked it. His texts with Sophie were exactly what I expected. Loving. Sweet. Promises that he'd be home soon, that he'd make up for lost time. There were pictures of Livia. One from just a few days ago, her missing a front tooth, grinning proudly. A video of her riding a bike for the first time. He had been there. Meanwhile, I had been home, alone, thinking he was at a work conference. I scrolled further. His messages with co-workers, with friends, and then a group chat. 4 names. Eric, his best friend Daniel, and 2 other men I recognized from his work. I clicked it open. The most recent message was from Eric. "Chicago trip is on, boys. Finally a weekend without women nagging me." A response from Daniel. "Dude, you have 2 and you still can't escape?" Another response. "You better hope your wives never find out." My blood went cold. They knew. His friends, his co-workers, they had known all along. For years, Eric had played the devoted husband not just to me, but to Sophie, and the whole time, he had been laughing behind our backs. I set the phone down carefully and slid out of bed. My hands were shaking. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was humiliation. And I would make sure he felt it too. I needed evidence, hard proof. I spent the next 2 days gathering everything I could. I backed up Eric's emails onto a flash drive. I copied messages, downloaded pictures, every flight receipt, every hidden bank transfer. I even took screenshots of his disgusting group chat, making sure to include every laughing emoji, every crude joke. And then, it was time for phase 2. I needed to get close to Sophie. Not as Eric's wife. Not yet. If I approached her that way, she might not believe me. She might think I was a bitter ex trying to sabotage her family. But if I came as someone else, someone friendly, that was different. I created a fake Facebook profile. An old trick I had seen younger women use for spying on exes. A few stock photos, a few mutual connections. I made myself someone Sophie would trust. And then, I sent her a message. "Hi, Sophie. I know this is totally random, but I think our kids go to the same swim class. I recognized Livia from the rec center. She's the sweetest. Would love to connect." It took her a few hours to respond. "Oh, wow. Small world. Yes, Livia just started there. What's your little one's name?" I smiled to myself. She had no idea she was talking to Eric's wife. I made up a fake kid, sent her some casual mom talk. Over the next few days, we messaged back and forth, slowly building a connection. She was kind, open, clueless. She talked about Eric so fondly. "I'm so lucky to have him. He's such an amazing dad." Every word made me sick. But I kept smiling. I kept responding. Because soon I would blow up her entire world. The opportunity came faster than I expected. One morning, Sophie messaged me. "Hey, are you free for coffee?" "I'd love to meet in person." Perfect. We arranged to meet at a cafe near the recreation center. When I walked in, my heart was pounding, but my face was composed. I spotted her immediately. She waved at me, smiling, completely unaware that I was about to destroy her life. I sat down across from her, forcing my own smile. Up close, she looked even younger than I had expected. Too young for Eric. She thought she had a whole future ahead of her, that she was building a life with a man who loved her. She had no idea she was living in my nightmare. She started chatting immediately. I let her talk about Livia, about Eric, about how hard co-parenting was, how much Eric hated dealing with his ex-wife. I almost laughed. I stirred my coffee, watching her closely. Then, when she paused, I took a deep breath and leaned in slightly. "Sophie," I said softly, "there's something I need to tell you." She frowned. "What is it?" I slid my phone out of my pocket and pulled up a photo. A photo of Eric and me. From last year, on our anniversary. I turned the screen toward her. For a second, she just stared at it, not understanding. Then I watched as the blood drained from her face. Her mouth opened, closed. "I don't understand," she whispered. I tilted my head. "I think you do." She looked up at me, her eyes wide with realization. And that was the moment everything changed. Sophie didn't speak for a long time. Her hands were shaking. She stared down at the table, her breathing uneven. I let her sit with it. Let her process the unforgivable truth. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she asked, "How long?" I swallowed. "At least 6 years." Her lips trembled. Then she covered her mouth with her hands and let out a quiet, broken sob. I should have felt guilty. I should have felt something, but I didn't, because she wasn't the enemy. Eric was. I reached into my bag and pulled out the flash drive. I placed it on the table in front of her. "What is this?" she asked. "Proof," I said. "Emails, messages, bank statements, everything." She hesitated, then slowly reached for it, her fingers brushing against the plastic. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. I shook my head. "Don't apologize to me." Because this wasn't about apologies. This was about revenge. And Sophie? She wasn't my rival anymore. She was my ally. We were going to destroy Eric together. Sophie showed up at my house 2 nights later. I heard the knock just after 10 p.m., and when I opened the door, she was standing there, pale, clutching the flash drive I had given her. Her eyes were red, her hair messy, like she had been running her hands through it all night. I stepped aside, letting her in without a word. She walked straight to the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter like she needed to steady herself. "I watched everything," she said, her voice raw. "Read every message, every transaction." I leaned against the counter across from her, waiting. She looked up at me then, and in her eyes, I saw it. The same fury that had been burning in me since the moment I found out. "I want to help," she said. I exhaled slowly. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "I want him to suffer." A slow, dark smile spread across my face. "Good," I said, "because I have a plan." It had to happen in public. Eric was a liar, but he was also a coward. If we confronted him in private, he'd find a way to twist things. But if we exposed him where he couldn't escape, where everyone could see exactly what he had done, that was different. That was humiliation. Sophie hesitated when I told her where it would happen. "Livia's school?" she asked, uncertain. I nodded. "It's perfect." She bit her lip. "I don't want her to get hurt in this." Neither did I. Livia was innocent. But I also knew Eric. I knew that if we did this anywhere else, he would make excuses. He would tell Sophie they could fix things, tell me that I was overreacting. But in front of teachers, parents, and his own daughter, he wouldn't be able to lie his way out of it. And that's exactly why it had to be there. Sophie took a deep breath and squared her shoulders. Okay, she said. Let's do it. The event was a father-daughter day at Livia's school. Eric had promised Sophie he would be there. He had no idea I knew about it. I arrived first, blending into the crowd of parents gathering near the entrance. The schoolyard was buzzing with kids running around, laughing, holding onto their father's hands. And then I saw him. Eric, walking in with Livia, smiling like the world was perfect. I felt Sophie stiffen beside me, but I touched her arm lightly. Wait. She nodded, her fingers curling into fists. We let him get comfortable, watched as he greeted teachers, shook hands with other fathers. Then, when he was fully settled in his lie, I stepped forward. His eyes landed on me, and at first, I saw nothing but confusion, then panic. His face paled, his entire body going rigid. I smiled. Hi, Eric. His gaze flickered around, searching for a way out. But before he could speak, Sophie walked up beside me. And that was when everything shattered. He looked at her, then back at me. His mouth opened, closed. Then Livia's small voice cut through the silence. Daddy? She tugged on his hand, confused. She looked between Sophie and me, her young mind trying to piece together what was happening. That was when the first parent noticed. A mother standing nearby frowned, glancing between us. A teacher paused mid-conversation, her eyes narrowing. Eric knew. He knew he was trapped. Who is she, Daddy? Livia asked, pointing at me. Silence. Eric's hands clenched at his sides. His whole body was tense, his jaw locked. He still hadn't spoken. So I did. I'm your daddy's wife, I said, my voice smooth, calm, lethal. A ripple of shock went through the crowd. A few parents exchanged glances. Someone muttered, "Oh my God!" Sophie let out a slow, shaky breath beside me. Livia looked up at Eric, confused, her small brow furrowed. Daddy? She asked again, quieter this time. Eric swallowed hard. Livia, sweetheart, let's go. Sophie stepped in front of him. You don't get to run, Eric. His face twisted. Sophie, not here. No, she cut in, her voice shaking with anger. You don't get to decide what happens anymore. She turned to the crowd. This man, she said, her voice rising, has been lying to me for 6 years. To his wife for even longer. He's been living 2 lives, 2 families, and he thought he could keep us both. A murmur ran through the crowd. The judgment was instant. Eric's face turned red. He stepped toward her, lowering his voice. Sophie, stop! No, I said, cutting him off. You don't get to tell us what to do. His eyes snapped to mine, filled with pure desperation. Linda! I smiled. I have screenshots, Eric, of everything. Your emails, your messages, the money you stole from our accounts to pay for your little double life. His mouth fell open, and then I pulled out my phone. I wonder what your boss would think, I mused. Or your friends. Or maybe your parents. His breathing was ragged now. The fear in his eyes was delicious. He turned to Sophie. Baby, please. Sophie laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. Don't you dare. Livia was crying now, clinging to her mother's side. I felt a small pang of guilt. But this? This was not my fault. This was his. A teacher stepped forward, frowning. Mr. Carter, maybe you should... I'm leaving, Eric muttered, his voice barely controlled. He reached for Livia, but Sophie pulled her away. No, she snapped. You don't get to touch her. For the first time, real pain flashed across Eric's face. Baby, come on, he begged. Livia sniffled. You lied, Daddy. And that was it. That was the final brutal blow. Eric took a staggering step back, shaking his head. He looked around at the eyes watching him, judging him, tearing him apart. He turned and walked away. He ran. And I stood there, victorious, watching as the life he built crumbled to dust. Eric never came back to the event. He ran like a coward, disappearing through the parking lot while whispers and murmurs followed in his wake. Parents exchanged looks. Teachers glanced at each other, unsure whether to step in or let the moment pass. Sophie stood frozen, gripping Livia's small hand so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Livia sniffled, tears still clinging to her lashes, her little chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. I had prepared for a lot, but this was the part that hurt. Because Eric deserved every ounce of shame, every second of public humiliation. But Livia? Livia was innocent. I crouched down so I was at eye level with her, forcing my voice to stay soft. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," I said. "You didn't do anything wrong." Her big brown eyes darted between me and Sophie, confusion written all over her face. She was too young to understand the depth of what had just happened. But she knew enough. Her father was a liar. A muscle in Sophie's jaw twitched. I could feel the storm inside her, the war between rage and heartbreak. But she took a steadying breath and knelt beside her daughter. "Hey, baby," she murmured. "Let's go home, okay?" Livia hesitated, glancing once toward the parking lot where Eric had vanished. She didn't ask for him, didn't cry for him. She just nodded and let Sophie lead her away. I watched them go, my stomach twisting. I had done what I came to do. I had exposed Eric, ripped away the lies, destroyed him. So why did it feel like he had lost so much less than we had? The fallout came fast. By the time I got home, my phone was blowing up with messages. Eric had called 3 times. A text followed. "Linda, we need to talk." I ignored it. Then another. "You went too far." I laughed bitterly. Too far? He had lived a double life for 6 years. Lied to me, lied to Sophie, lied to his own daughter. I hadn't gone far enough. By morning, the real consequences had begun. Eric's boss found out. Someone at the school had overheard the confrontation and spread the story. By noon, he had been suspended from work pending an investigation. Sophie wasn't answering his calls. I wasn't answering his calls. His world was crumbling, just like it should. And the best part? He did it to himself. 3 days passed before Eric stopped calling. At first, it was rage, accusations, blaming me, blaming Sophie, blaming everyone but himself. Then came the desperation. "We can fix this. Please, just talk to me." Then silence. That was how I knew I had truly won. I sat on my back porch, sipping a glass of wine, staring at the fading light of the evening. The air was cool, crisp, peaceful. It had been a long time since I felt peace. My phone buzzed beside me. A message from Sophie. "Filed for child support today. His lawyer says he's a mess. Thought you'd like to know." I smirked, shaking my head. Good. Eric wasn't my problem anymore. For the first time in 20 years, I was free. I heard footsteps behind me, and a moment later, my daughter Emily sat down beside me. She was 17, old enough to understand everything that had happened. She pulled her knees to her chest, watching the sky with me. "Do you think he regrets it?" she asked. I thought about it. About Eric, alone in whatever cheap hotel he was probably staying in. About the weight of everything he had lost. I took a sip of my wine and exhaled slowly. I don't know. Emily glanced at me. Do you? I turned to her, smiling softly. No, I said, not even a little. and for the first time in a long, long time, I meant it.